How are y'all doing? I am Pastor Lance, and it's so excited to be able to start our new sermon series, Justice for All. And I'm excited to be able to bring God's Word today. And just as a reminder, if there are things that are a little bit hard to comprehend or able to process or anything like that, reach out to your small group leaders, or you can email me, lance@uppercoast.org, with any questions you may have about anything scripture related, or if you need prayer for anything as well. We're here for you. So we're starting our new sermon series. Some of you may have heard this story. When I was about 7 or 8, I was with my family, some siblings, playing in a neighbor's yard. In the South, typically if somebody has a trampoline, or typically anywhere, somebody has a trampoline, if you're a kid in the neighborhood, you're gonna go to their house to play on the trampoline. So we're at our friend's house and we're all jumping on this trampoline. Me, a couple of my brothers, and some other folks, some other kids in the neighborhood. And as we're jumping around, I notice my brother is getting more and more close to me as we're jumping around. And he's doing backflips and all this sort of stuff, you know. But he was getting closer and closer as he was doing these jumps and these flips. And so, as he's doing these different things, he actually hits me in the face. And I'm like, what is happening? In that moment, I couldn't help but feel like I was wronged, or feel like I was offended, because I got tapped while my brother was, playing on the trampoline. I felt like I'd been wrong, and I wanted justice, right? So we end up getting to a fight, and I just remember, like, in that moment, feeling like something has to be done for the wrong that was done to me, or at least in my 7 and 8-year-old brain. And as we're starting our new sermon series, when it comes to justice, what comes to your mind? I think of the word justice. I think about, court. I think about when you say your Pledge of Allegiance, right? Justice for all. And I think about even Judge Judy on TV. I don't know if you're not old enough to remember Judge Judy, who was a TV judge who mitigated things between folks who would come on this television show, different civil suits, and they were looking for justice on that show, right? What is something that you have seen in a story or something fictional where there's extreme love, or there was like maybe an extreme instance of love or love stories from a book or a movie? Think about that. Maybe a story that you related to where there was something that love was expressed or shown or whatnot through a story or through a movie. We've all seen different kinds of love stories or people doing things for love in different movies. And I have to share a story about when I was in middle school and I wrote my first love letter. Well, sort of. It was ghostwritten, right? So I told my sister one day when I came home, hey, I got a real big crush on this girl named Mia, and I'm a boy, so I'm not good with words, but I really want to let her know that I like her, right? And so I get my sister to write this really, very hilarious, by the way, love letter so that I can give it to this girl at school in middle school. So I get the letter written, I bring it the next day, and I give it to the girl Mia. And she took the letter and no response at all afterward. I was like, what's going on here? Oh my gosh. So heartbroken, because when you do something or an act for love, you want that person to know that, hey, I care, or, you know, I don't mind your presence being here, you know, less than somebody else, right? So sometimes when we think of these things, sometimes we can do ridiculous things for love. But there's the not so ridiculous truth underneath these ridiculous gestures. Deep down, we understand that love is not just an emotion that you feel. Love is not just a word you say, but ultimately, love is something that you demonstrate and you show through what you do, through your actions, which is very important. And when I think about justice, we can think about justice, because justice is often tough to define. When we think of justice, justice could be a punishment, right? Somebody goes to jail for something that they did, or go to prison. We often think of revenge, like I did with my brother, like, hey, something has to be done about something that was wrong to me. Or maybe some of you hear the word justice and you've just heard that a lot through social media, if you heard that online. Well-intentioned, it could be well-intentioned or misguided, but when you realize that the idea of love is, if you thinking that it's just about revenge, that's the wrong way to look at justice. Pardon me. When you look at justice just as revenge, that's the wrong way to look at it. There's an old concept, an eye for an eye, and that's this concept that if somebody does you wrong, you can do them wrong legally. And that is a kind of a terrible way to look at it, because often that just has this perpetual cycle of, if this person does something wrong to me, then I can continue to go on doing wrong to them and vice versa until the end of time. What's the alternative? What's the other way to look at what we've been talking about? And is it possible that getting justice is about more than just punishing people who hurt us? And how do we balance to forgive others when they have done stuff for us? Or how do we learn to stand up for ourselves, but also how do we learn to forgive others? And see, what we need to understand is that we are going to have a biblical, a godly perspective on how to do this, because we might not always have the right way to look at it. And for the next few weeks, we're going to be talking about what God says justice is and isn't, and we'll see what justice and love have to do with each other. We're getting into the book of Genesis, and as we get into the book of Genesis, we're going to get into a story about a dude named Joseph. Joseph was a guy in his family who was the favorite by his father. He had a lot of brothers, but his father made it be known that he was the favorite. So much so that Jacob loved his son so much more than his other sons. He used to love his son Joseph so much more that he gave him a jacket with technicolors or a multicolored jacket that was flashy, bright, and what we see is that there's this system, this sort of scenario and circumstance being set up where it's uncomfortable for Joseph's brothers, for Jacob's other sons. And also what you should know is that Joseph was a half brother. He was a brother by another a woman that was married to Jacob. So let alone there's this favoritism, there's also this blended family with different different kind of components in it as well. And so Jacob gives Joseph this coat, and it's already weird because of this blended family and this favoritism. He's actualizing, right? He's also showing, hey, I love this kid more by giving him something to wear and to show around. And that mentality is kind of weird, because what it might have created was this mentality, even on both sides, maybe Jacob or Joseph, Joseph and his other brothers, of this kind of this us versus them mentality. And there was always tension in the family, right? And don't we all want to be part of a family or friend group where there's actually unconditional love? We want to be a part of something that no matter what we do, or no matter what birth order or who our mom is, our dad is. We want to be born to somewhere where we can be accepted no matter what, without prejudice, without favoritism, without bias. But we see that Jacob didn't do that. He did not create that kind of environment for his sons. He allowed his personal preference to impact how he loved his children. And many believe that Jacob preferred Joseph simply because Joseph's birth mother, he liked his birth mother better than the other mother. And maybe you've actually experienced that in your own life as well, being treated unfairly simply because of who you came from. And whatever the reason, Joseph's dad created this unhealthy dynamic. But to be honest, when we look at this situation, Joseph ain't really make it a whole lot easier as well. And we can see how Joseph kind of added to this dysfunction and this unhealthiness. We're going to take time and we're going to be reading Genesis chapter 37, verse 1 through 11. Take time and read it. In Joseph's dreams, God revealed important things, but Joseph definitely didn't make it easy, right? He kind of just flexed on his brothers by reading saying how he said, like kind of from reading from his dreams. All right, it's true God was speaking to Joseph through his dreams, and it's true that God showed him his future. But the one day he would have been in position of authority over his brothers, and he was talking about that, but that's not the point of what we're trying to get to. The problem was that Joseph wasn't that he had his dreams. God speaks to us all in different ways. It was the way that Joseph bragged about his prophetic dreams, and the way that he shared his dreams with his brothers. It's kind of crazy. Let's read. I'm going to read Corinthians chapter 13, verse 1 through 7. And when we talk about how we should treat others and how we should treat others with love, Paul was writing this to a letter in Corinth to a group of Christians in the city in the New Testament. And this is what Paul has to say about how you treat others and how you love others. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 1. Through verse 7. If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give all I have, and if I deliver up my body to be burned, I have not love, I gain nothing. See, love is patient, love is kind. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoings, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things. It believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. When we look at how Joseph responded to his brothers, we don't see that Joseph responded in a way that reflects what Paul describes as love. This kind of godly love, this love that comes from God. This love looks a little bit different. It doesn't give you the right to necessarily flex on your brothers or to be able to show off favoritism in front of others. Proverb puts it this way, even just talking about our neighbors in chapter 11, verse 12. Whoever belittles his neighbor lacks sense, but a man of understanding remains silent. So what could Joseph have done? Maybe he could have treated his family with a little more respect, a little more love, better regard. Just because he was the favorite don't mean he had any right to try to belittle his family or treat them like they were less than. And maybe he could have actually done the opposite. Maybe he could have interceded on his brother's behalf. He could have been protective for them. And he could have maybe even balanced the unbalanced perspective that his father had. Because that would have been the loving thing to do. See, Jacob's favoritism for Joseph messed up the family. His brothers was filled with hatred for him. They was not feeling him just saying all these different things and kind of blurting out this vision to them. And Joseph was arrogant. He was insensitive to the way his brothers were hurting because it was already weird. And in this family, there was already a lot of hurt. When people are hurt, they usually want justice. But what is justice? Justice is when something is just, fair, lawful, or right. But justice, it can't be the same thing as revenge. Because if everybody in Joseph's family who had been hurt had tried to take revenge on one another, it'd have been like the eye for an eye. The cycle would have never ended. And a family didn't need no more vengeance. They didn't need no more problems between the siblings and between all these different folks. They needed to communicate through actions. Because like Paul described in 1 Corinthians, that's how you love. You love through actions. And because justice isn't revenge. And if you're taking notes, you need to write this down. Justice is love in action. Justice is love in action. You may not have 11 brothers who hate you like Joseph did, or maybe you do. But I know what it's like to be hurt by others and to hurt. And too often it's easier to act unjustly than it is to love. We'll rush to do the wrong thing than to rush to love one another. So consider how you may have done that in these different things. Too often we act unjustly in these kinds of relationships. In your relationships, what ways do you need to choose love instead of revenge? Humility instead of pride. Kindness and gentleness instead of cruelty. And are you like Joseph, creating conflict with others because of your lack of love and your lack of awareness? In your community, what ways can you show love in your school, your neighborhood, or your community? Even if you don't cause a problem, how can you put love into action and help solve the different problems you see in these areas, in your school, your neighborhood, or your community? Is there a conflict where you can help restore peace? You might know an issue between two people you know or don't know as well. And maybe you could be the mediator. Is there a need you can help meet? In the world, that's another area. See, in Joseph's family, his father, Jacob's favoritism and brokenness caused this divide between Joseph and his brothers. And when you look at the world around you, do you see conflict? Do you see division? As we reflect on these next couple of weeks, we need to consider what can we do to live out justice, which is love in action. What things can we do, or what things do we need to address in order to live out what God has told us to do in the scripture, and has shown us the wrong way to do it, but also has described the right way to do it? Peace.